and gentlemen, let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I think I've grown a lot with the deep balls, huh? Don't we think? Yeah. That was probably a subtle jab, but it was a jab.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, a Thursday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Beards. We head up until 2 o'clock the next 4 hours. We're starting a little bit earlier today because Matt Quatraro, the newest Royals manager, will be introduced a few minutes from now at Kauffman Stadium. And when that starts, we will head out there and listen into the press conference and the Q&A with Matt Quatraro and J.J. Piccolo as they introduce the 19th manager in Royals history. Looking forward to hearing what Quatraro has to say. Time in the Guardians organization, time in the Rays organization. Has a relationship to some degree with John Sherman because they did cross paths for a couple of years. What's his view on how to run a baseball franchise, an organization, a team year to year, a bullpen, a lineup? Analytics will be brought up, certainly. Openers will be brought up, all of that today. We'll hear from Matt Quatraro. We'll talk some Chiefs football as well. Craig Stout, KC Sports Network, KC Laboratory podcast comes up around 11 o'clock or so. We'll hear from the Chiefs around 11:45. Coordinators today, Dave Tobe, Steve Spagnuolo, Eric Bieniemy. Assuming Dave Tobe will be asked about Kadarius Toney and returning punts. And then some players, we'll see who we get at the podium today. Play a little sports or leisure today as well. And then 5:30 today, KU taking on Pitt State. A little preseason action, a little exhibition action with Jeff Boschee heading back to Allen Fieldhouse to take on the Kansas Jayhawks. That's 5:30 basketball pregame. 7 o'clock is when KU takes on Pitt State. And then ESPN KC will have Thursday night football with Eagles and Texans, and then World Series in progress, all of that stuff coming up today throughout the show. And there's already a ton of stuff to get into anyway. Before we get into press conferences and all of that stuff as well, and hearing from Quatraro and hearing what he has to say and his assessment of this team, there's news in the college basketball front as well, which is, I would say, pretty significant news for KU in that Louisville has been handed down their penalties from the IARP. That case got done today, day after it was announced that Bill Self and Curtis Townsend and KU were self-imposing a 4-game suspension for them. Difference being, KU charged with 5 Level 1 violations. Louisville was charged with 1 Level 1 violation, 3 Level 2s violation, including the head coach responsibility, same thing that Bill Self is alleged as well, charged with the head coach responsibility. Louisville was given 2 years probation, small recruiting restrictions, and a $5,000 fine. That was it. In its decision, this is the key point for KU. Just real quick before we hear from Matt Quatraro, there's photo ops going on right now, and we'll head out there when they start.
Also, a name placard for J.J. Piccolo side by side here, so presumably we'll hear from both of them simultaneously.
Hopefully, that's the case. In its decision, the IARP panel said that it could not find sufficient proof that Adidas was acting in U of L's interests, and the university did not have a role in Adidas's actions. So, something to think about. Here's Matt Quatraro and J.J. Piccolo.
From the Rays. He's been the bench coach before that. Had some time with the Cleveland Guardians. Joined by Executive Vice President, General Manager J.J. Piccolo. Matt's family, his wife Chris, sons George and Leo. We welcome you to Kansas City and to the Royals. Chairman and CEO John Sherman here would like to open with a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Sam Mellinger introducing the panel. Here we go.
I want to pass this off to the two people that I think you've all come to see today, but let me just make a couple comments. Big day for Kansas City, big day for the Royals. Opportunity to meet Matt, maybe for the first time, and get to know him. But also JJ, I think he's someone at the table that I think we're starting to learn a lot more about him these days. 6 weeks ago, or over the last 6 weeks, I should say, we talked a lot about organizational change and development, adapting, process improvement, and JJ went right to work in his new role, resulting today in something that the club is very excited about, the naming of Matt Quatraro as our next manager. And JJ, I appreciate your leadership and the sense of urgency that you've taken in kind of going about as you're crafting your vision for our club and for our baseball operations department. Matt, I would say, this is a big day for us, and as JJ put together a very rigorous process as we went about trying to select the best person for this job, and Matt really rose to the top in that process. His career, if you look at his career, his experiences in baseball, from a player to a coach to a bench coach, has prepared him for the challenges ahead here with the Kansas City Royals. Couldn't be more excited. When we announced this deal earlier in the week, I traded texts with Matt, ready to congratulate him, and he thanked me for the confidence that with the Kansas City Royals. Couldn't be more excited. When we announced this deal earlier in the week, I traded texts with Matt, ready to congratulate him, and he thanked me for the confidence that we're showing in him. I would turn that around, Matt, and say thank you for the confidence that you're showing in the Kansas City Royals. When we have these processes, we were interviewing Matt, but he was also interviewing us. And while we selected him, he selected us. And so I very much appreciate, Matt, that you recognize both the opportunity and the potential of this club. So I think Sam wants to he wants the lectern back from me, and we'll turn this over to the people that we came to see. Thank you.
JJ Piccolo is going to be stepping to the podium, I believe. Sam Mellinger is going to be introducing them right now as they go from John Sherman to Piccolo and Matt Quatraro, photo ops, handshaking, things like that, as we're listening into Matt Quatraro being introduced as the next manager of the Royals.
Yeah, first just want to thank everybody for being here today. We're really excited about the announcement of Matt being our manager. But before talking about Matt, I do want to congratulate Chris and Matt's boys, George and Leo. When somebody goes through a process like Matt has several times here in the last couple of weeks, it's stressful for a family. So to eventually land a job that hopefully you're excited about is a family celebration. So welcome to Kansas City. As far as our process was concerned, we're really proud of how we went about this. It was a quick but efficient process, something that we were locked in on from the very get-go. I want to thank John for giving us his support in being aggressive but thorough, and his partners. And I know they're excited about Matt being a part of the organization. I want to thank our baseball operations department. They were tremendous from the beginning, setting up the interview. What are we looking for? What are the qualities we want in this coach? All those things that go into identifying what the Kansas City Royals needed at this point, our baseball operations department stepped up. We had a really good panel, a committee, if you will, of 6 people, from the design of the interview to the questions that were being asked, to the follow-up, to the debriefing that happened after every interview that we had. Ultimately, to making the decision of who our manager was going to be, those 6 people were very influential, as well as many others. The criteria, we started out with a very large number of names. So trying to get down to what exactly are you looking for. We identified somebody that had experiences that we thought were important, whether it be in previous major league managing experience, bench coach experience, minor league managerial experience. That was important to us. We identified a personality and a leadership type that we thought would mesh well with our players. We identified the need for somebody that was willing to collaborate across all departments that we have within this organization. Matt clearly answered that bell. Once we realized that we were not focused or going to land a manager that had previous managerial experience, it became even more important that we had somebody that sat next to successful managers in the major leagues. By sticking to that criteria, I think we were able to go from that large number of candidates down to a pool of about 7. It was 7 people that we interviewed. 6 we interviewed in person, 6 to 7 hour interviews. One person was involved in the playoffs, so his interview process was a little bit different. But to arrive at this decision in a 2-week period, it was 2 weeks ago today that you came in, to arrive at this decision in 2 weeks, I'm really thankful for all those that were involved. One thing I think is important to note, I was clear with the general managers that we asked permission of their employees. We were interviewing the person and how he fit our organization and not interviewing the organization they were coming from. I think that's important. There's a distinction between the two things. And that's something that we knew would come out, and we learned a lot about other organizations, more about their values than their processes, which we were fine with because we knew the background of our candidates. Ultimately, whoever is in this seat, we're going to be able to talk about our processes moving forward. So I want to be clear about that. As for Matt, I mean, we couldn't be more excited. He's been through this process many times. I mean, he's had a really difficult 3 weeks being involved in many searches. It was really clear how he connected with everybody he came in contact with, his humility, his ability. In his career has shaped his thoughts, his beliefs, and how he will make decisions moving forward. He's been very fortunate to be around very good managers and other coaches along the way, many of which we identified with from years ago. So that was something we didn't really expect. The last thing I'll mention is, when you're coming to a close, you're really trying to figure out how do we poke holes in the guy that we want. I could not find anybody that had anything negative to say about Matt Quatraro, I'm sorry. But even after we announced Matt's hiring, the text messages I received, people I knew well, people I don't know well, just really applauding our decision, but more so applauding Matt. So with that, Matt, I want to welcome you as our 18th manager in Royals history. We're looking forward to this partnership.
Well, I'll probably just start by saying it won't take long for people here or somebody else to find something negative to say, because people are going to find something at some point, right? This is a tough job and people are going to have negative messages delivered. But I think the one thing that was really clear through this process is that we're going to have a process for the way we make decisions, and I was very confident in that, and that came out every step of the way. And I think that's going to go a long way. The transparency is going to go a long way with the players, with the staff, with the whole organization, with the community. So, but what a tremendous honor, like just to be named the manager of the Royals. It is a culmination of the process, but it's also just the beginning of our partnership together and what we expect to be great things going forward. I feel extremely fortunate to be sitting here today. I'd like to thank Mr. Sherman, ownership, JJ, and the front office for entrusting me to help lead the organization going forward in this next exciting chapter of this really storied franchise. It's extremely humbling, and I know I wouldn't be sitting here without the support of a lot of people. my family, my mom and dad, and all the, I've had like JJ said, I've been really fortunate, not only in the major leagues, but throughout my life to be around really good coaches and people that have mentored me. And like I said, as excited as I am to be named the manager, I'm even more excited to jump into the process. You guys will learn that about me. I'm extremely process-oriented. And I think the process that we all envision here is building a championship environment that is going to bring the Royals back to the top tier of Major League Baseball and be that way year after year. I mentioned the commitment, the support, the forward thinking that I'm confident is here will undoubtedly serve us well putting perennial contenders on the field. And the last thing I'll just close with is beyond the stuff that's the obvious things, the baseball part of it, the focus that was here on the people in the organization, not just in this group, but years prior, it really bursts through when you talk to people. There's a lot of loyalty. A lot of people have great experiences with how the organization has helped their families and the community, and I'm excited to be a part of that. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, guys, we're going to do questions. I think I've communicated this with most of you. We're on a little bit of a time crunch. We're going to get Matt with you guys in smaller groups as best we can today and into the future, but I appreciate you working with us on that. Just raise your hand. I'll write you down. Joel, you go first.
Welcome to Kansas City. Joel Goldberg with Valley Sports and Royals Television Broadcast. Fans have heard the name. They don't know a lot about you yet. What is your style of baseball like? And from afar, what were your observations of this young Royals team?
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I mean, I tell my wife I'm easily forgettable. So there's a lot of years of, kind of just. I like JJ said, I'm really fortunate to have observed a lot of really good baseball over the years, minor leagues, major leagues, and I think I've just taken my style. I would say is what team is put together. I wouldn't shoehorn myself into. I love Earl Weaver. Everybody likes 3-run homers and strikeouts for the pitchers, but whatever style of team that we put together is what we're going to work with, and I think. More so than anything, I'm a believer the things I've seen my last couple stops are depth, playing the whole roster, utilizing everyone. So that, that helps performance on the field, but it also helps the environment in the clubhouse. And I think I'm a big believer in that.
What have you observed of this young Royals group? You saw them from the other side.
Yeah, extremely talented, young. I mean, there were some real similarities this year. At certain points in the year, I mean, they were running out 7 rookies in the lineup. We had a similar stretch in the middle of the year in Tampa this year as well, and that's extremely challenging to grow at this level. But the expected growth on the backside of that is a great thing to project, and so that's what I saw the most.
Andy Rogers.
Hey Matt, Andy Rogers with MLB.com. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
As a first-time manager, what advice have you gotten so far? I imagine this has been kind of a whirlwind of a week for you, but what kind of advice have you gotten?
Well, the most common thing you hear is just be yourself. You can't, through these processes, I've talked about being around Tito and Kevin Cash, and I can't be those guys. They're themselves, and they do great things because they're themselves. So that's the number one thing. And the other thing is, it's just something that I've seen. Just collaborate. Any one person sits here and tells you that they have the answer. That's not the way. There's a collective group of minds here, and the players. We all have to rely on each other and take information back and forth.
And as far you mentioned the family atmosphere and the young club, obviously, what did you learn about the organization through the interview process that made this organization the right fit for you?
Well, the things you just mentioned, it's extremely exciting to be with a young group of players that's just hungry to get better. I think the other main thing is that, I think there is a lot of infrastructure in place here to collaborate with, and that came shining through in the interviews.
Lynn.
JJ, first I wanted to ask, you mentioned Matt's personality, and I wondered what from the interview process came out that made you feel like it was a good fit with the group that you guys have.
with our players right now, I know they're eager to work with people that are willing to listen, and Matt kind of just exemplified how we saw how well he listens. We actually today he met about 9 people in a department, and we quizzed him. 2 seconds later, he named 7 of the 9. So he's very attentive, and I think that really matches well with our players and what they want out of a manager. And obviously, we got the pitching coach coming up, same type of thing. So that's what stood out.
And then Matt, Lynn Worthy from the Kansas City Star. I wondered, just you mentioned a little bit of the infrastructure through the process. What I guess would be your observations of the organization and how, if at all, has been different from maybe from afar, looking at the Royals organization.
That's a really good question. I don't think I would have been able to say what my perception was for the behind-the-scenes stuff from looking from afar. On the field, you see the talent, but JJ and I have a little bit of a relationship going back to playing against each other in college a long time ago, and we had run into each other when we were both working in different capacities in the Dominican. So I've heard so many good things over the years about the way the people were treated here, and had a little bit of a relationship with Dayton from playing against him as a college coach, and so those things held true. But I didn't have any other notions about how things ran behind the scenes.
Sam McDowell.
Sam McDowell, Kansas City Star. Matt, you mentioned just that there'll be a process for how you arrive at decisions. I wonder if you could shed a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, I think I've touched on it a few times. The collaboration. I think we're going to spend a lot of time getting to know each other within the office, the field staff, the R&D department, all those things, and I think everyone gets a voice. Everyone has the ton of information starts and it works its way to the field, and those processes to get that information and distill it down to the players is the process that we're going to work off of so that it can be clearly communicated to them.
John just mentioned the fact that you also interviewed the Royals. What are sort of the boxes you're looking for as you're going through that process?
Yeah, support. I've mentioned this. I've said it straight to Mr. Sherman, like that. In order to be process oriented, you have to have the support from ownership, and that spreads through the organization. A very simple example is if somebody misses a ground ball in the 9th inning and we lose the game, if the owner's in the office and pounding the table after the game, then that attitude and that tension spreads to JJ and spreads to the office and then to the field staff, and everybody's coaching scared, playing scared, looking over your shoulder. And that was the furthest thing from what I got from the process. So that kind of stuff, the ability to collaborate, those things really stood out.
Todd.
Todd Lebo, Sports Radio 810. Kind of for both of you, I think John had mentioned earlier about data and analytics, and they had a lot of information here that maybe wasn't getting implemented. Maybe first from you, Matt, and then for you, JJ, kind of how you guys talked about those things and what sort of stuff maybe the Royals weren't doing that maybe you will do here with some of that information that the organization has had.
Well, I can't speak to what they weren't doing, and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that anyway. Really, most teams have the same amount of data, and it's a matter of opening up the lines of communication between field staff, front office, R&D, strength and conditioning, everybody. And that's what I plan to do and what our staff will do.
And from our perspective, we just needed somebody that had a great acceptance of the information and an ability to utilize it and put it in play. It's one thing to have it and look at, but now you need to know what to do with it. And when we spoke to Matt, it was pretty clear that has been part. He may not even realize it, but it's part of how he works every day, and it stood out.
And to follow up, Matt, like this is kind of whatever new age data and things like that. You've been around the game for a long time. When did you become a true believer in some of the things that people are using now in baseball? Have you been a long-time adopter of it?
Well, I was a minor league coach when Joe Madden was managing and Andrew.
But somebody that has that growth mindset and intellectual curiosity, that's going to put us in a better position moving forward. So it really stood out.
Organizations that are a little bit similar in that.
Dave Scrub.
Hey Matt, Dave with the AP. You're coming from two organizations that are a little bit similar in that kind of small markets, kind of limited amount of resources, and yet they've consistently won. So what can you take as sort of commonalities from Cleveland and from Tampa that maybe you can plug here?
Pitching. Put good pitching on the field, you got a really chance of winning. And I think one of the things that JJ's and the little spenders, right? But that doesn't really tell the whole story of what goes on the field. A lot of that goes into name recognition, but talent is talent, regardless of your experience level, your name recognition. So what I look at is winning those decisions on the margins. And you know, the obvious ones everybody knows, you know, everybody wants to play the best players, everybody wants to get the best results. But where we're going to hopefully make strides is by winning those decisions that are winning those decisions that are 51-49 decisions and compiling those 51s up so you're consistently winning instead of consistently on the 49 side of it.
You sort of lead right into another obvious question around here. Pitching has been a struggle for this organization to develop for quite a while. So what do you envision for that going forward? And also, you're obviously going to have to build a staff, and pitching coaches can be part of that. So where do you see that going?
Yeah, well, there's a tremendous amount of talent on the pitching staff here right now. And I think I've talked to a handful of the guys already, and they are super anxious and eager